We're going to look at monitors right now. With respect to your monitor, if you're using one screen, when you're looking straight across, your eyes should actually intersect the center part of the computer screen. Often, people have their monitors too low, so I'm going to demonstrate that right now. People usually have it at this height, and the issue with that, when you're working all day, if you have a look, then you're looking down too much, and it puts a lot of pressure and stress on your neck, and it actually causes your shoulders to round forward as well. If you have it up at the right height, which for me would be at this height, when I'm looking straight across, I'm able to actually keep my shoulders back and my neck back, but I'm looking straight. And then when I am reviewing things on the monitor, I'm able to actually just use my eyes to look up and down instead of my head as well. Now, if you are using two monitors, you should be trying to sit in front of both of them. Often, what we do is we actually shift them off to the sides. So try to keep them in front of you and keep them split like this. If you do find you're actually using one screen more than the other during the day, try to move some of your work to the other side as well, so you're constantly looking back and forth like this, and it's easier on your head and your neck with respect to things. And that would be it for monitors. Now what we're going to look at are the keyboard and the mouse. We'll look at the keyboard first. With respect to the keyboard, when your hands are on the keyboard, you actually want to rest your wrists so that they're supported. And in this case, I have them resting on the desk. If you do have a keyboard tray, you can rest them on the front edge of the keyboard tray. And then that way you're keeping pressure off your wrists and your forearms. Now, if you're looking at my forearms, they're actually slightly elevated. You can either have yours horizontal or up just a little bit. So if you do have them down, it will put more pressure sometimes on your forearms. So if you keep them either horizontal, your forearm, or up a little, it will keep pressure off them and your shoulders as well. So in this position, it's the most comfortable possible for me. What some people do is there's some errors with it that they'll actually raise up their armrest too high, and then their shoulders are up higher, as you can see that. So always make sure when you're resting as such that your shoulders can rest like this. Now, with respect to the mouse, your mouse, when you're resting your hand on it, you should be resting your wrist as well on this mouse, just like you do when you're on the keyboard, and that'll keep it less pressure or force on your wrist itself. When you do put your hand on the mouse, try not to just put your fingers, because then you're putting more pressure through your hand. Try to rest your whole hand on it and just use part of your finger, such as this, instead of this, or this. Because if you bring your hand back, then that's actually more tension on your fingers. But up here, it's actually better. Now, what I normally recommend, which takes a bit of work on your brain, is if you are right hand dominant, that you actually switch to the left side mousing, or vice versa. We do a lot of things with our dominant hand, such as cutting vegetables, writing. People even stir soup and do other things with their right hand, open doors. And then we come to work and then we're mousing all day with that hand. And what I do notice is a lot of people do get wrist, forearm, or shoulder problems when they're using their dominant side more. So one thing that is easy to do would be to switch to your non-dominant side for mousing. It is actually, as you age, a good thing to do as well, because it's easier, it's good for your brain. Once you get used to mousing with the non-dominant side, you are able to even go and use it on the right hand side and not even notice that you're switching sides. But it does take a bit of work, and I do recommend you give it a try. Now we're going to look at the chair and a footstool. With respect to the chair, when you're using it, there are levers on the side normally on most chairs. The first one that you'll work with is the one that raises it up to the correct height. Now, if you were raising it up to the correct height, then when you're sitting at your desk, it's as such that, as we mentioned earlier on with the keyboard and the mouse, your arms are at the right height. So that's one thing you're looking at when you're raising it up. Now, the other lever on here actually allows you to normally angle back both the seat and the back. Some chairs, this chair does not have two, but some chairs have two levers, one that will allow you to just do the seat and one will allow you to do the back. Now, with respect to the chair and those levers, what you should be doing with them is taking them and angling them so the seat is angled slightly backwards and the back is angled slightly backwards. So it actually feels like you're reclining when you put it in that position. So when I put mine in that position right now, I'd be looking at being right here. So you can see the chair is like that. And when I'm in that position, it allows me to sit back into the chair properly. If you have it back like that, you don't have the tendency to, because if I leave it straight like this, I'll have the tendency to want to slouch forward while I'm working, because the chair then is right against me and I'm leaning forward with it. Now if you take it back a little bit, it allows you to sit back into it and rest your arms. Now when you get it in that position, you'll feel like you're reclining somewhat, and you will be a little further away from your workstation than you used to before, so you'll need to pull yourself in. Now when you get into that position, because this is angled now slightly up and the seat is angled slightly, the back is angled slightly back, it does put both your hips and your low back into a position like this, and that allows the least amount of pressure on your hips and your low back. So afterwards, after you're like that, what you should be doing is actually putting your feet up on a footstool, which will even take more pressure off of those regions and even your legs. Now, if you don't have a footstool, you can use a binder. So you could use a binder such as this and put your feet on it instead. But try to use something that's angled because it's actually more comfortable in that fashion. The other thing to look at with the chair, often there's a little lever back here and people don't think about this one. And if there is one back here, raise this piece up, because then it allows you to have the chair that it's up near your shoulders and gives you better posture for your lower back as well. Because when it's down a little lower, I have less support for my shoulders and my back compared to when it's up right up high and I tighten it up, then I have better posture and support this way. And that would be your chair and your footstool. Now what we'd like to look at is if you're actually working with paperwork. So you're looking at reading or writing on paper. We have 3 different demonstrations here. We're going to work our way from this way over. And this would be the wrong way of doing it. So with respect to sitting in front of paper and leaning forward like this and reading, it's very difficult on your back in this position because you're not sitting back in your chair. You can see I'll be putting pressure on my neck and my shoulders doing this as well. So you shouldn't try to keep it down like this, because the issue with that as well, it makes you actually look down all day and it can give you headaches or migraines because of that position of your neck. It does create a lot of problems and tension. The other 2 scenarios are actually better scenarios. So one would be to use binders and prop them up so you can put your paperwork on it. And then if you're doing that, then you can actually sit back in your chair properly and you're looking this way instead. So you actually don't have to look down as far as looking at this paper, because you'd be looking down even further. The third scenario is one of the even better scenarios. If you just get a little stand, they sell different types of stands, and you could, if it's not a big book that you have to read, the paper could go on here and you can attach it and you could be reading and reviewing it this way. Now if you do have a big book or binder you do need to review, so say this was a book or binder I was looking at and it was open, you could just take some other binders and prop them up in behind it to be able to read it. If it does actually come forward or start to slide forward, just prop even a stapler or a 3-hole punch in front of it, and then it won't slide forward on you. Those are the ways of looking at reviewing with paper. We're going to look at if you have to data transfer information off of paper onto the monitor. What people often do is they'll leave their paperwork down here and they're looking down, then up, and it's always that it's on one side, and it's always putting quite a bit of tension on your neck and your body because you're twisting to do that as well. What would be the better solution for that would be to purchase one of the little, they clip onto the side of your monitor, and it's a paper stand, and then you'd actually have your paper right here that you can look at it and over and keep looking back and forth. And that's actually the best thing to do if you're actually transferring data from a piece of paper onto your monitor, especially if you're doing it for a long period of time during the day. It's perfect to do. If you can't do that, then the next best thing would be to have a monitor stand right beside and put it, or excuse me, a document holder, and you place it there, and then you're not looking down as far. And that would be if you're transferring data. What we're going to look at now is keeping anything that you're using close to you. One of the things would be a phone, or let's say you use a stapler often at work and you're putting it too far that you have to reach. Now, if I'm going to use this phone right now, I have to reach too far to get to it if I'm actually putting numbers in and then having to get this. That's constant sort of overreaching. What you should do with the phone instead is have it a little closer so that you can actually not be reaching with your shoulder and twisting your body. I can punch the numbers in and then phone and talk. So that would be anything that you're using at work. You should try to keep within reach so you don't have to overreach for it, because you can get a lot of issues doing that. So this is a sit-stand station. What we've actually just done is raise it up just a little bit to show you that if you don't take it up high enough, it can put pressure on things. So I actually don't have it high enough for my height right now. And when I put my hands on here to actually use the keyboard, or even if I were using the mouse, my forearms are down slightly, which will put a lot of pressure on things, and I do want them up just a little bit more. And there is a lot of tension on my shoulders when I'm in this position right now. So what I'd want to do is actually bring it up just a little bit higher. So now this sit-stand station is actually at the proper standing height for me, because you can actually see that my forearms are horizontal, so that when I'm resting my hands on the keyboard, that they're in the right position as well, and even if I use the mouse, it would be the same. So that's the one thing to look at with a sit-stand to bring it up to the right height. The other thing to look at would be the monitor, because right now when the monitor's here, I'd be looking down, such as what we talked about with the monitor use earlier on. I should have the monitor that when I'm looking horizontally across, my eyes are intersecting the center part of the monitor. So what I would want to do is just raise it up to this position here, so that when I'm now looking straight across, my eyes are intersecting the center part, and there's less tension, as we talked about, on my head and my neck. The other thing you do want to think about with a sit-stand station is, especially if you're going to be standing for longer periods of the day, because some people like to use them all day long, is not to wear heels or even men's dress shoes that don't have actually a good cushion on the bottom, because a number of them are flat through there. So what I normally recommend to patients is they actually bring a pair of running shoes to work and leaving a pair at work. So when you are standing, just switch into your running shoes, and then if you happen to have to go to a meeting, put your dress shoes or your heels back on for that meeting, and there'll be a lot less pressure or force on you. One other thing to think about as well with a sit-stand station, if you do find there is a lot of fatigue in your legs and your calves start to bother you a little bit, you might want to look at buying one of the anti-fatigue mats that they have for sitting and standing, or for standing, and then there's less pressure on your legs during the day, and you'd stand on that. And that's how everything we'd address with a stand station. Now, there's one other thing to look at, and that's if you're actually using a laptop at a workstation. Now, if you are using a laptop, everything's within here, the monitor, the keyboard, and the mouse, because it's usually the trackpad. So what you should be looking at doing, because as you can see, if I'm looking at mine, my hands are in the right position and everything, but I'm actually looking too far down, because we talked about the monitor earlier on being at the right height. So you have to do one of two things with it. One would be an option of raising your laptop up and moving it away from you, so that when you're looking straight across, your eyes are intersecting the middle part of the computer screen. And then what you'd actually have to do is then hook an external keyboard and mouse to it, so it's all in the right position. That's one option. The other is you take your laptop, and often on these monitor stands, you can actually purchase another piece that attaches to it, and it would go to the side, and you would actually put it up on there, and again still get an external keyboard and mouse. And that's how you would actually solve your laptop issue with respect to things, so that you're not looking too far down and you have everything in the right position. And I would recommend you get a mouse instead of using the trackpad. So what we're going to look at now are some actually faults that people do, which I often see when I go to workstations. And one of the major ones is actually putting everything off to the corner, such as this. Because then you have your monitor off in the corner, your keyboard on an angle, and your mouse on an angle. So when you're working, you actually have to turn sideways and rotate your body and do this. And we shouldn't be doing that because you're always doing it in one position. It's not as if we're going this way later and doing it for part of the day. It's always one way, and it can create a lot of, I've seen a lot of neck and shoulder, upper back, and even lower back issues with that. Always make sure that everything's right in front of you that you're using, and especially your keyboard and your mouse and your monitor. You want it right in front of you so that you're actually working like this.